300-pound dudes tackling you on a frozen field, the last thing you want to do is stay out there. Believe me, the Rams players were thinking about the jacuzzi at their team hotel, that they find it laughable, but more laughable if they totally disregard the trade whatsoever. This guy has transformed the balance of power in the Eastern Conference. And you could argue the entire defense is going to be absolutely ferocious next year. But if your number one priority is to win a Super Bowl, then J.J. Watt is making a grave mistake. To ride this Chad Henne experiment for an entire game, I might need a whole bottle of Hennessy just to get through that. Guy who's won 8 division titles, who's made 5 AFC championship appearances, who's reached the Super Bowl 3 times and has won 2 Super Bowls for this organization. Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl with Green Bay. Drew Brees has only won 1 Super Bowl with New Orleans. There's only 13 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won multiple Super Bowls, and Big Ben is one of those individuals. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Glad you could join me on a jam-packed Monday morning. A lot to discuss, not only from the NFL, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, that incredible finish. The MLB playoffs are underway. Giants and the Dodgers meeting for the first time ever in the postseason, and the United States men's national team loses a puzzling qualifying game in the World Cup to Panama. I'm going to touch on all of that, but we start in the NFL with the matchup that actually was delayed for about 30 minutes due to inclement weather and a potential storm forecast on the way. The Buffalo Bills traveled to Kansas City, knocked off and absolutely stomped the Chiefs 38-20 in Arrowhead. And I'll be honest, this is the first time ever, at least in this 4-year run, watching the Kansas City Chiefs, where I no longer kind of have this feeling like Kansas City's wearing this invincible cloak like they had in years past, where no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what the situation is, they're going to find a way to win a game. And even against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the Super Bowl last year, I kind of chalked that up more to, well, it was a porous offensive line. They were banged up, ravaged by injuries. Yes, the Bucs defense played exceptionally well, but I chalked it up more to the Chiefs' offensive line being hurt as opposed to potential pixie dust rubbing off of Patrick Mahomes, that he no longer possessed that magic elixir. And I'm not going to say that Mahomes still doesn't possess that elixir, because he's still sensational. Although I will say that this year he hasn't been playing up to his traditional standards. But what I am saying is that in the NFL, it's okay to be incredible. It's okay to say that a team has figured you out, not to say that they have figured out the talent or the skill set of Patrick Mahomes or the offensive genius and brilliance of the Kansas City Chiefs. But it simply means, because again, not that it's suggesting that an opposing team can render your best player useless or insignificant, but that NFL teams can figure out ways to beat you. And what's been exposed right now are the numerous ways that teams are finding out to exploit the defensive deficiencies of the Chiefs and to actually find ways to beat them. Again, it's not meaning that they're rendering Patrick Mahomes insignificant, but that they're simply finding ways to win. And to be honest, Patrick Mahomes didn't play well last night. Now, again, the inclement weather had a lot to do with it, rainy conditions. When you look at his numbers, 33 of 54, 272 yards, but 2 interceptions, a costly lost fumble. So he hasn't been playing up to the standards that we've always expected of him, at least through this past 3-year run, which has been an unbelievable 3-year run, 2 trips back-to-back to the Super Bowl. Arguably should have been a 3rd trip, although they lost to the New England Patriots at home in the 2019 AFC Championship game. So part of the feeling is I no longer feel like, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, that he can always offset the deficiencies of this team. And that's what we're starting to see is, as great as he is, you can only cover up so much. And in years past, it seemed like every lead was an insurmountable lead for the Chiefs, or for that it wasn't an insurmountable lead for the opposing team, that the Chiefs could find a way to come back no matter how large the deficit was, because of the magic of Patrick Mahomes, because of the magic of Andy Reid and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce in this offense. That's the feeling that kind of was imbued throughout all of us. And yet now we're starting to kind of reel back, I think, some of those expectations, some of those beliefs, some of those faiths that we've had in this team to be able to pull that off year in and year out. And again, I'm not going to say that the Chiefs aren't good anymore, or that, to be honest, they shouldn't be the team to beat in the AFC, because as impressive of a win as this was for the Buffalo Bills, and I'm going to touch on them in just a moment, until I actually see the Bills or anyone else knock off the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game or in the postseason, I'm not going to move off that stance. But the Chiefs just haven't looked like the same dominant team that we've been accustomed to seeing. And even with that, 2 of their 3 losses they arguably should have won. That's a credit to how good they are as a team. The fact that you lose to the Baltimore Ravens on a coughed fumble by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you should have won that game. Against the Chargers, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw a late game interception, they likely win that game. So instead of looking at this team at 2-3, we're looking at this team with a 4-1 record. And who knows if they win those games, if they play a little bit more confidently against the Buffalo Bills last night. So the past 3 years, the difference was this Chiefs team, they were the ones finding ways to win. They were the ones that were pulling out the late game heroics to close out opponents. And that's the difference. Right now, we're not seeing that happen anymore. So I thought that from that perspective, this was a really telling game, because it really highlighted and exposed some of those shortcomings, but also, again, kind of this invincibility cloak no longer having the same sheer to it as we had grown accustomed to seeing the last 3 years. Now, on the flip side, for the Buffalo Bills, extremely impressive win. I know I've had my doubts about the Buffalo Bills for the last 2 years, but this was an extremely impressive win. I think Josh Allen continues to look stronger and better every single year. And what I really was impressed with yesterday was his decision-making. We've known that the playmaking has been there, but the decision-making is something that he's continued to have to work on, taking care of the football, making less careless mistakes, prioritizing and valuing every single throw, even if it's a throwaway. So his decision-making is head and shoulders above where he was at, even I'd say last year. Even when he was on this incredible run last year, there were still some moments when I thought he was forcing some throws last year. Right now, he's playing extremely well, and the Bills are rolling. They're 4-1. He was 15 of 26, but 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 0 interceptions. That's the big stat to me. 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles, 91.5 QBR, including a rushing touchdown. So I really like the kind of what's happening in between the temples here with Josh Allen. And that's such a crucial part of the quarterback position, and he's really starting to embrace all of that. And I think we're starting to see just the tip of the iceberg for Josh Allen and this Buffalo Bills team. I think right now they're the second best team in the AFC. Not to say that they can't surpass the Chiefs or that they won't. But again, until I see the Chiefs either totally implode, or unless I see the Bills or another team knock them off in the postseason, I'm just not going to move off that stance just yet. But if I had to create a hierarchy right now, doesn't reflect who they are down the road or who they will be. Right now, sure, the Bills are the better team. But I'm not moving off the stance that I still believe the Chiefs could win in the postseason. But a great win nonetheless for Sean McDermott and that entire coaching staff. And I want to transition to another team that has been on the short end of the stick multiple times, but deserve a lot of credit and a lot of praise right now. And that's the LA Chargers. The LA Chargers hosted the Cleveland Browns yesterday at SoFi Stadium. And it's interesting, in pro sports, there are a few franchises within every single major sport that we deem to be cursed, right? That we always kind of joke or mock because they've got this black cat running around through their organization. Some invisible virus that's going around through every franchise. We know those franchises. In the NBA, for the longest time, it was the LA Clippers. In Major League Baseball, and by the way, with the Clippers, of course, that was with Donald Sterling, that whole ownership group. With in Major League Baseball was the Chicago Cubs. They hadn't won a World Series in over 100 years. And in the NFL, it was the LA Chargers. And what happened was all three of these franchises eventually had major adjustments and major changes and overhauls to their leadership group, whether it be new ownership, new general managers, new head coaches. The combination of all three combined with the arrival and development of certain star players. Those are what changed the cultures at all three of these organizations. We start with the Clippers. Well, after the whole Donald Sterling fiasco, Steve Ballmer, the richest owner in the NBA, bought the Clippers. And in the first season with Doc Rivers at the helm, they didn't necessarily attain the types of success that they wanted, but they went all in. They traded for Kawhi. They traded for Paul George. And they bring in Ty Lue, and they tab him to be the new head coach. And the Clippers reached the Western Conference Finals for the first time last year in franchise history. The Cubs. What happened with them? Well, they bring in Theo Epstein, a brilliant baseball mind and an analytics guru in baseball. They bring in Joe Madden to be the next skipper. You develop a couple draft picks in Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant and Javier Baez, and you combine them with the veteran leadership of David Ross, the catcher, and the veteran pitchers you bring in, John Lester and John Lackey, and you win a World Series in 2016 for the first time in over 108 years. And what are we seeing right now with the Chargers? Well, the Chargers had always been the laughingstock of the NFL. And even before the merger in 1970, when the Chargers were first originated in 1960, when they were part of the AFL, when you include that first decade and then the 56 years in San Diego from 1970 when they did merge with the NFL, the AFL merged with the NFL, the Chargers reached the Super Bowl one time in 1994, lost to the San Francisco 49ers. They hadn't ever won an AFC championship since that moment. And they've always kind of gone the raw end of the deal. They're the second team in LA. They've kind of been this destitute franchise that hasn't had a secure place within this city and in the entire NFL ecosystem. And they were always being mocked for finding new ways of losing close games. Even last year, this team kind of created new ways of losing. They'd be up big with huge leads in the fourth quarter, and they blow it. They were almost like they're almost like a personification of the first four missed field goal kicks by Mason Crosby of the Packers yesterday against the Bengals. Like any chance they had at winning, it hits the crossbar. They miss the field goal. Almost like the other end of the other side of the coin for the Detroit Lions, constantly being on the other end, on the losing end of a heartbreaking game. And that was just kind of who the Chargers had been. And finally, they draft their quarterback last year in Justin Herbert. They've got the quarterback set. And this year they bring in Brandon Staley and they find their head coach. And that's, for the moment, has seemed to be the magic elixir to perhaps erase this curse from this franchise. You got your quarterback in Justin Herbert, and you've got your head coach now in Brandon Staley. And I cannot extol the job enough that Brandon Staley has done for this LA Chargers team, the confidence that he has imbued in these players, the confidence that he has in Justin Herbert has just rubbed off on the entire team, and they feel much more confident. They play a lot more confidently with Justin Herbert, with the play calling, the chutzpah and the gumption that they display now week in and week out. It's no longer viewed as an anomaly when we see the Chargers and Brandon Staley on a 4th and long go for it, because the play of the game to me yesterday in this wild back and forth affair against the Cleveland Browns came on a 4th and 7 play. They're down by 7 points, 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It looked like the defenses weren't going to be able to string together any stops. 4th and 7 at the Browns 25, and there's no hesitation. Staley and Herbert are going for it. They pick up the first down. And we've seen that numerous times throughout the season. We saw a big 4th and 9 play at Kansas City. It was initially 4th and 4. Then there was, I believe, a false start or some flag against the Chargers. Don't remember right this second. Pushes it back 5 yards. It's 4th and 9. And it has less to do, and then we even saw it against the Raiders, multiple 4th and shorts. They went for it. And it honestly has less to do with a distrust with the defense and more to do with an elevated trust in Justin Herbert and this offense. And so now it's just becoming a part of their offense. That's what they do. They go for it on 4th down. And it's extremely telling. But again, it's those types of play calls that even if they were technically designed and called last year, so much of the production of players is based on the feelings that they have about their head coach, the trust that they have that they're going to put them in the best positions to win games. So I was just, again, and then of course, because Herbert was fantastic. 398 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then, of course, when it's 42-41 after the Chargers are storming back, they miss the extra PAT, the second PAT of the game for Gano. And you're just thinking, well, maybe the pass is going to rear its ugly head once again. It didn't happen. They found a way to pull it out, and arguably they beat one of the best teams in the AFC. The Cleveland Browns were viewed entering this year as potentially the second best team in the AFC, just behind the Kansas City Chiefs. So I thought that this was a tremendous, tremendous game because it just showed, again, I'm not going to belabor any points about the Cleveland Browns, what they should have done, what they didn't do. At the end of the day, it was the Chargers, but on a more macro level, it highlights the change in attitude, the changing of the guard of you got Brandon Staley, you've got Justin Herbert, and now this team is rolling, and they're playing extremely confidently, and I think that they've turned over a new leaf in LA with the Chargers. And you could argue right now, listen, they're tied for the best record in the AFC with the Buffalo Bills. And arguably, they're the two best teams in the conference. Antonio PAC. Morning, I'd love to see the Browns-Chargers rematch in the playoffs. Browns were not viewed as the second best team behind Kansas City. It depends. A lot of people viewed their roster purely based on their talent. Appreciate the comment, Antonio. A lot of people viewed their talent, at least their roster level, as perhaps one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. If you viewed the Bills as slightly better entering the season, that's totally fine. Not going to give you any pushback on that. But a lot of people thought the Browns entering the year were a potential AFC championship contender. Not sure anymore, but certainly something to keep your eye on. But appreciate the comment. Transitioning to totally something different, changing from the NFL to another violent sport in boxing. The marquee fight, the Trilogy Fight, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Boy, was this one good. And mind you, whenever you hear the term trilogy, there are expectations that come with that. Major expectations, because if you're going to pay to watch the same two guys fight for a third time in a major event like this, understandably, you're going to have expectations. And fortunately, historically, these third fights typically deliver. Not always, but typically, because not every fight is worthy of a trilogy, but the ones that are deliver absolutely. Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward, 3 fights in a 13-month span. In 2013, Gatti ended up winning via unanimous decision that year. Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield was a tremendous one in 1995, tremendous trilogy. You had Marco Antonio Barrera versus Eric Morales in 2004. And what was special about that Barrera won was these were 2 Mexican fighters that truly despised one another. And then, of course, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in 1975. That Muhammad Ali ended up winning. But the thing the thing that unites all of them was the natural disdain that they had for one another. And there's certain fights that you look forward to because of kind of the novelty of the matchup. There are others that you look forward to because of the buildup and the height and the promoting aspect of things. And there's certain fights you look forward to because of the sheer magnitude and size of the individuals fighting. And to me, that's the reason why the heavyweight titles, and this was a WBC heavyweight title match, rubber match. That's what makes those fights in particular additionally special. And kind of group them and categorize them in a class all by themselves is because of the behemoths of the individuals that are fighting. These are legitimate giants in the ring. These are legitimate giants fighting in the ring. And there aren't any height or weight contours. Anything goes. Anything goes. And here you've got one gargantuan of a man in Tyson Fury, who's 6'9", 280 pounds. Think about that. That's like LeBron James fighting in the ring, but a LeBron James with an additional 30 pounds, 25, 30 pounds. That's Tyson Fury. His name is an onomatopoeia. You hear the word Tyson Fury, you just think you're going to get smacked in the face, that he's about to unload some furious rage out on you. And his counterpart, who we view as a small guy compared to Tyson Fury, is a guy in Deontay Wilder who's 6'7" and a roughly 240 pounds. So entering this contest, you had Tyson Fury, who's 2 inches taller and 40 pounds roughly heavier, if not heavier, by the time that the fight actually took place, given the fact that the weigh-in, you normally have kind of not drink, yet you haven't drunk any water. So once you kind of refuel that water back in your body, you eat some food, that 280 probably jumps back up to 290. And this was one of those fights where it was truly worth the price of admission, because this was truly a spectacle. It was truly a spectacle. The venue was tremendous in Las Vegas. And to me, this fight truly tested the wills of both of these men. The way that they were competing, the pounding that they were taking, the repeated shots to the body, to the head, and the fact that neither one of them acquiesced or gave in, that it went almost the distance to the 11th round is truly commendable. And you can't ask as spectators, you can't ask for two fighters to provide and give you any more than that. You really can't. And there's no disappointment. I'll touch on the actual specifics of the match, of the fight, in a moment, but just from an appreciation standpoint, I can't say enough good things about both of these two gentlemen and what they offered us. They poured their life, their blood, sweat, tears out on that ring, and to go 11 rounds, the fact that it was unbelievable watching these huge human beings being knocked to the ground by one another and yet still rising. Deontay Wilder was knocked down 3 times in the 3rd, 4th, and 10th rounds before being finished off in the 11th. He rose 3 times. Tyson Fury got up twice off the mat in the same round in the 4th inning. And yet neither one of them caved. It was almost like you're watching the Walking Dead, the TV show. All these guys keep rising up again, or Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, where you think he's dead like 3 times, and all of a sudden he wakes up and he's still alive. Sorry if I spoiled that for people. The show came out over 2 years ago, so you should have seen it by now. But every single time you're counting him out, the other one gets back up off the mat. The metaphor of it's not about how many times you get knocked down, it's about how many times you get off the mat, works figuratively and literally here in this context. And I was extremely impressed to take those types of poundings. And what was almost, you're almost wanting to shudder and shiver and cover your eyes, because it's almost difficult to watch these guys battle through these beatdowns after beatdown after beatdown. And in a way, I almost found myself at some point rooting for and sympathizing with Deontay Wilder, just because of the sheer magnitude and size of his opponent in Tyson Fury. I mean, to try and see Deontay Wilder standing next to Tyson Fury in the ring on Saturday night. Tyson Fury made Deontay Wilder look small. And I don't think there are any other fighters that could ever have this intimidating presence against Deontay Wilder. I mean, the height difference, the size difference, the weight difference, it was just almost unnerving. But the way that both of these guys competed was impressive. I thought that Wilder was a lot more tactical in his approach this time. He wasn't relying on just the one big punch, kind of the one hammer punch he would normally go to. It was a lot more tactical, a lot more methodical and strategic in his approach. He was utilizing the jab. He attempted and landed a couple uppercuts, took some jabs to the body, didn't always target the head of Fury. And I thought that strategically he came in with a much more pragmatic approach. And he had Fury stumbling a little bit at times, but at the end of the day, the main difference was the endurance. Fury just looked to be in better physical shape. He was able to withstand the pounding a lot more. By the end of it, Deontay Wilder was stumbling. He was woozy. He was wobbling. It looked scary. It almost looked like he was experiencing a certain degree of vertigo, because at times it was like he was just floating around in the ring. His eyes appeared almost shut, and he was just kind of swaying around the ring. It was incredible how he even stood up. And any time that Fury was closing in on him, he would just clutch him and grab him and try and hug him and get the refs to intervene. But that was the problem, is you're in this ring with Tyson Fury, and he's got you on the ropes from the very beginning. And the one thing you can't do against Tyson Fury, you can't hide. There's no way to distance yourself when he's closing in. He occupies so much space in the ring that you seldom see him backed up to a corner. Normally, he's standing right in the middle, and either you're going to come at him or he's going to slowly walk at you. And that's what we saw happen. And he had Wilder against the ropes the majority of the fight. And when he was closing in, you couldn't just help but get extremely worried for Deontay Wilder that it could be nights out for him. And so the endurance level was just way better. Fury had more stamina, and the punches that he delivered obviously wore down Wilder a lot more than the punches that Wilder hit and landed. And you look at all the stats, and the reality is Fury was the better fighter. He was the more tactical fighter. He looked like the better fighter. He landed more punches, landed more jabs, landed more shots to the body. The percentages weren't drastically different, and the scorecards were fairly close up until that point, but it still would have been Tyson Fury's fight. And so I was really impressed with him. But again, just have to commend both of these guys because you just saw how gassed and absolutely exhausted and exasperated Wilder and both of these guys were. So again, Fury proved to be the more tactical fighter, but major shout out to Wilder and major shout out for both of these guys for putting on a heck of a show. So much fun to watch. Appreciate them for delivering on what now will go down as an all-time classic, a great trilogy fight in the world of boxing. Absolutely no question about it. But Fury, 11th round, caught him on the side of the head again, and it was game over. 11th round knockout, game over. Okay. A lot of great stuff. A lot of great stuff today. Appreciate once again Morning Joe right here on Giants Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on YouTube. Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Mondays and Wednesday mornings. So I want to transition to the MLB playoffs. Again, this is one of those Monday mornings, and this is why I love fall so much, and especially the month of October. So much is going on. Now, obviously, the major fight, those aren't always scheduled in the month of October, but you've got the MLB playoffs. You got the thick of the NFL season, right in the thick of it. The NBA season is just around the corner, is going to be starting, I believe, a week from tomorrow, the 18th or 19th, whatever day that next Tuesday is on. That's the first day of the new NBA season, which I cannot wait for. The Lakers played in the postseason, but the MLB season and the postseason is in full swing right now. It's the NLDS. It's the Dodgers and the Giants. Finally, we get that matchup. It's tied 1-1. I didn't have a show before the start of the NLDS, so we are playing a little bit of catch-up here. But 1-1, Dodgers and the Giants. They're returning to Dodger Stadium after playing at Oracle Park on Friday and Saturday night. And first of all, this is the first time ever that the Dodgers and Giants are meeting in the postseason. It's the first time ever that two 105-plus win teams are meeting in the postseason. And this is a rivalry that dates back to 1890, over 130 years, when both of these teams were located in different boroughs in New York. You had the Giants located at the Polo Grounds in Manhattan. The Dodgers were located in Brooklyn, of course, for the longest time. And then what happened was in 1957, the Dodgers owner, Walter O'Malley, decided he wanted to relocate the team. He moved to Los Angeles for financial and other reasons. And Horace Stoneham, the owner of the Giants, already had plans to move the Giants out of New York, potentially to Minnesota. And O'Malley came in and to preserve the rivalry said, hey, come out west. And Sacramento and LA were the two fiercest economies in California. So it naturally fit to be the new locations of the Dodgers and the Giants. And that's how they preserved the rivalry. And so it's amazing that in all this time, this is the first time that they're meeting in the postseason. And of course, through the first two games, the Giants took game one 4-0. Great pitching by Logan Webb, just a 24-year-old guy, absolutely dominated the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers responded in game 2 with a 9-2 shellacking of their own. But let me first say this, because, again, I didn't get a chance to talk about this before the show on Wednesday, which was the last time I had a show last week. It was the Dodgers and the St. Louis Cardinals. I was previewing the wild card game. The MLB got saved by the Dodgers on Wednesday night last week. Because to think that here we have the Dodgers, who had won 106 games, having to play in a single elimination, a do-or-die game, a wild card game against the St. Louis Cardinals just to reach the NLDS. The fact that they nearly lost that game is preposterous and further highlights the faultiness of the MLB postseason, because there would have been incessant diatribes and harangues and criticism, huge shrapnels of criticism aimed at the direction of the MLB and their executives had the Dodgers missed the postseason. Not because we don't want to credit the St. Louis Cardinals, but because you have the second best team in baseball that happened to be in a division with a team with 107 wins as opposed to 106 in your same division, and now you're relegated to the wild card game. So let me first say that. But we got what we wanted. It's the two best teams in baseball. It's been that way from the very beginning. And it's great that they're facing off not only for the rivalry, it's great for the fans, it's great for the networks, and it's great, honestly, for the game of baseball and the MLB, because they need marquee names, they need marquee players and teams and storylines to be revolving around these organizations, and especially in the postseason time. That's what you hope for. And this is an epic postseason matchup, but as to be expected, the Giants won game 1, but I do want to say this. And obviously, it's Max Scherzer versus the former Dodger Alex Wood tonight. Game 3 being played at Dodger Stadium should be a fantastic matchup. I do think that the Dodgers have the better pitching staff and have more talent, which I'll touch on in a second. But I've always wanted to say this, and it was further highlighted and I think elucidated a bit more since game 1 that the Dodgers lost 4-0 to the Giants. I've always shared this feeling and confided to my friends how bizarre it is to me and how mind-boggling it is to me that teams in baseball celebrate with champagne midway through the season, or when they clinch the pennant, or in this case, when they win a wild card game. Because think about the timeline of all this celebrating. The Dodgers won the wild card game on Wednesday night. They're celebrating with champagne, and they're popping bottles, and they're getting obliterated and smashed Wednesday night. In less than 48 hours, you got to play a high-intensity playoff game on the road in San Francisco. So you know Thursday night, after you've just been drinking all night Wednesday night, Thursday is not going to be a productive day. You're going to be hungover, and the next day you got to go play a high-intense playoff baseball game. It just makes no sense to me. I've never understood it. And again, it's not just the Dodgers. Every team's been doing this for years, and it just doesn't seem like a smart, prudent idea. I understand you want to take a second to appreciate the season that you've undergone, but it's always kind of surprised me, and it's just befuddled me that they do that they celebrate this hard in the middle of the postseason. It just never made sense to me. But what stood out was the bench of the Giants. And what we're seeing is that the Dodgers are a star-studded team. They're a star-heavy team. So if their starting rotation isn't on offensively, like was the case in game 1, well, then they're going to get exposed, because the Giants have so many more guys that they can plug in off the bench. Brandon Belt goes down. They've got guys that can fill in and be just as productive. And the Dodgers are a little bit thinner on their bench. They rely much more on their starters and their starting rotation, which when it's on, it's the best starting rotation in baseball. They've got arguably the best, if not the second best, pitching staff in baseball, and their bullpen is fantastic. So that's where they're going to have the edge, is their bullpen. And again, you got Scherzer going tonight in Game 3. Game 4, I'm not sure if it's going to be Tony Gonsolin or potentially Walker Buehler. Buehler will have had he pitched in Game 1, so that was Friday. So you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 4.5, 5 days off. They might throw Gonsolin in out there and then kind of ride their bullpen. I think ultimately it's going to be the pitching at home combined with just the star power that I think is going to propel the Dodgers not only in Game 3. I think they're going to close this out in Games 3 and 4. The fact that you've got 2 of the next 3 games, basically it's a best of 3 with 2 games at home if you're the Dodgers, and the first 2 games are at home. And so you got to take care of business. It's a perfect opportunity. This is a team that I think got that monkey off their back last year, just being able to win the World Series. And the fact that they had to come back trailing against the Atlanta Braves in the NLCS. I think this team's a lot tougher mentally than we probably give them credit for. I'm sure there was no desperation in that locker room or any worry in that locker room after Game 1, because they came out and romped them in Game 2. So I think Game 3 tonight is going to be the big turning game. If the Dodgers can find a way to pull out Game 3, which I believe that they will, given that I trust Scherzer much more than I trust Alex Wood, then they take care of Game 3. I think they close it out in Game 4. So that's what I have to say about that. Okay. Final topic before my Malkin's moments. I can't believe, I truly can't believe I have to talk about this. I was having such a glorious Sunday. I was really enjoying my Sunday. I'd done some broadcasts for Cal Poly Pomona, where I broadcast during the year. And I get a notification that the U.S. men's national team loses to Panama 1-0 in the FIFA World Cup Qualifier. I don't think there is a more infuriating national team that I have to root for than the United States men's soccer team. Because they might be the most polarizing and inconsistent, yet consistently inconsistent national soccer team I've ever seen. I was just on this show extolling the job that they did to win the CONCACAF, to win the Gold Cup in August. They beat Mexico to claim their 7th Gold Cup title. Again, this was just after they had reached rock bottom. We were ridiculing them for losing to Trinidad and Tobago 4 years ago around this same time. We had missed the World Cup for the first time since 1986, and they bounced back. They beat Mexico 2-1. They win the Gold Cup for the 7th time. They now have the 2nd most Gold Cup titles, and I truly believe that they had turned a corner. And I really liked what I was seeing. They had a lot. They still have a lot of really talented young players on this team. And now I'm reminded once again the sober reality that was losing to Trinidad and Tobago 4 years ago. They lost 2-1. Here are the last 4 qualifying games that the United States have played this year. They tied El Salvador 0-0. They tied Canada 1-1. They beat Honduras 4-1, and they beat Jamaica 2-0, which, with the exception of maybe the Honduras game, those other ties to Canada and El Salvador aren't very impressive. So they weren't really looking that impressive in the qualifying matches. And now this, you lose to Panama. The population of Panama, I looked this up, there's 4.4 million people in Panama. For some context, I live in Los Angeles. In LA County alone, there's 9.9 million people in LA County alone, more than double the entire population of the country of Panama. And we lose. We lose. There's 333 million people in the United States. We lose to a group of 4 million in Panama. This is no shot at Panama. I'm sorry if there are any Panama citizens listening to this. I doubt it, but if there are, apologies. But this is the first loss of the 2022 World Cup qualifiers for the United States men's national team. They only attempted 5 shots, 0 shots on goal. I'm just speechless because this is a team that averaged their average margin of victory against Panama in their last 5 meetings was 2.5 goals. In fact, they just faced them in November of 2020 in an international friendly. They won 6-2. Now, I understand that Greg Berhalter, the head coach, he messed with the starting lineup and he inserted a bunch of second-string guys. And I know that Christian Pulisic and Weston McKennie and Giovanni Reyna were not playing due to injuries. But still, guys, I hate having to go on here and rant about this team because I want to praise this team. I was really excited about this United States men's national team. I truly believe that they had turned a corner. And I understand that maybe that population of 4.4 million people, they dedicate all their resources, their athletic resources to soccer, whereas in the United States, it's saturated with so many sports that they don't focus solely on soccer. But this is just embarrassing. Once again, extremely disappointing. I'm not going to say it's as just abhorrent as the loss to Trinidad and Tobago. It's not, because the United States can still qualify for the World Cup. It's not like this disqualified them. But this is just the latest string. I mean, it just makes me livid and enraged inside. Honestly, it's just like eviscerating my gut because every time there's some momentum with this team that I want to root for, they come up a little bit short. And it's only fitting that, by the way, this match was played on exactly the 4th anniversary of that 2-1 loss at Trinidad. It ended a streak of 7 World Cup appearances for the United States. And in fact, that year, that defeat the United States suffered enabled Panama to reach their first World Cup. Think about that. The fact that we lost 4 years ago to Trinidad and Tobago gave Panama a golden ticket to their first ever World Cup. Just very disappointing. Very disappointing. On a more upbeat note, final topic is Malkin's Moments. It's some great Malkin's Moments, always my favorite segment of the show. So we start first, NFL with the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals 5-0 right now, the only undefeated team in the NFL atop the NFC West division. In fact, this is the first time that they started the season 5-0 since 1974 after they beat the San Francisco 49ers at home 17-10. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. This team is rolling. The defense has been playing extremely well. Chandler Jones, Budda Baker, Isaiah Simmons. This team is loaded, and right now, only undefeated team in I was going to say baseball or basketball, in football, and they're looking the part. They're extremely, extremely impressive so far. Sticking with the NFL, Tom Brady. It's hard to believe that he's still able to break records, yet at age 44, for the first time in his career, he threw for over 400 yards and 5 touchdowns in a game. It's never happened before in his career, and he's 44 years old. It's amazing that he's still breaking his own records, despite the fact that he's been in the NFL for over 20 years. And yet he achieved that in the Buccaneers' 45-17 demolition over the Miami Dolphins. In golf, Phil Mickelson won for the 3rd time in 4 career starts at the PGA Tour Championships. He closed with a 4-under 68 on Sunday, a 2-shot victory in the Constellation Furyk and Friends tournament. The 51-year-old captured his 6th career major title. Still doing it. We were just talking about athletes that are defying their own age. Phil Mickelson is still doing it. Still raking, even at 51. Major shout out to him. A couple more. The Red Sox, they walked off on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the 13th inning last night thanks to a 2-run home run from Christian Vasquez. I'll have to pull up the video at another time. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. 13 innings. The last time that I saw the Boston Red Sox engaged in a 13-inning baseball game was against the Dodgers in the 2017 postseason, or the 2018 World Series, which the Dodgers ended up winning that in the 13th inning. But this time at home, Vasquez knocks it over the green wall, the green machine, and or the green monster, rather. And the Red Sox end up winning that. Last two, Trayvon Diggs, cornerback for the Dallas Cowboys, caught his 6th interception in 5 games. He's had at least 1 interception every single game he's played this year. That is an NFL record, NFL leading mark right now. In fact, the only other Dallas Cowboy player to do it was Don Bishop in 1961. That's it. I mean, Trayvon Diggs has had a phenomenal career so far, or rather a phenomenal season. He looks like he's on pace to have a phenomenal career. In fact, it's crazy to think that this year he's been more impactful for the Dallas Cowboys than his older brother, Stephon Diggs, has been for the Buffalo Bills. And that's saying a whole lot. That's saying a whole lot. Right now, Diggs might be the defensive player of the year. At least, again, it's only through the first 5 weeks, but still truly, truly impressive. And finally, I don't have the video again. I didn't pull it up, but big just shout out to the Aggies of Texas A&M knocking off number 1 Alabama at home. There's a viral video of the family of the kicker kind of watching this kick unfold, and to see the emotions, it's truly heartwarming. Those are the types of stories that we hope for, that we root for. Listen, Alabama's not out of it. We've seen time and time again, it's one loss. The SEC is there's so many potholes along the way. It's only one loss. They can still avenge it. But a major shout out to Jimbo Fisher, who became the first assistant, by the way, first former assistant of Nick Saban to beat him in a game in college football as a head coach of another team. So big shout out to the Aggies and their program. That's a major win. That's all the time that I got for today. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Morning Joe every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube page, Jonah Malkin, Morning Joe with Jonah Malkin. Follow me on Twitter at morning_Joe or at Jonah Malkin. Instagram, JMalk97, TikTok, Jonah Malkin. Again, love the comments. Keep them coming. I appreciate the comments. Try and give people shout outs when they tune in. So appreciate that and keep that coming. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.